The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of the sponsors, advertisers, or presenters. Advertising does not imply endorsement by the sponsors and presenters.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Lighting Controls Podcast. We have another fantastic episode for you today with one of our favorite people. But before we jump into the conversation, let me take a minute to remind everyone today's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association.
And it's financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. Got all of our episodes and a whole lot more. But also, huge shout out to our sponsor for this episode. We could not do these episodes without sponsorship. MW Connect is an excellent resource for you to check out if you're unfamiliar with them, or you didn't realize they rebranded from McWong. You should check them out. mwconnect.us is their URL. They are an award-winning Bluetooth solution for your project. They have a lot of options ranging from simplistic devices to complex integration capabilities, and they're always looking for the next best thing to incorporate into their systems. We've had them on the show a couple of times talking about projects that sound really fascinating and worth your time to check out their case studies. They have excellent case studies on their websites and resources to make sure that you're code compliant. So check them out, mwconnect.us. But until then, let's get into the conversation. So today we have a returning guest, Lyn. Lyn, for those who have not listened to your previous episodes, do you mind just giving us a quick breakdown on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I am an MEP coordinator. Basically, I am the chaos coordinator, as sometimes we're called. I work for Rudolph and Sletten now. That was a job change in the last 4 months. So basically, my job is to help our subcontractors. So Rudolph and Sletten is a general contractor. I help our subcontractors work together to make sure that everything gets built per the design.
That's great. Well, thank you for joining us, and
yeah,
congrats on the new job.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think this is actually a really good topic of discussion, just because some people don't understand the difference between a general contractor and a subcontractor. So do you mind just explaining the difference there?
Yeah, so a general contractor is the one that is going to hold, well, in a prime agreement, that is in an agreement where the general contractor has a contract with the owner to design a building. We are the head of that, and then we hire on specialty subcontractors to work with us to build what they do best. There are multi-prime contracts where the owner makes contracts with the general contractor and what I would consider a subcontractor, like an electrical subcontractor. But we come on as different levels, but they all report to the owner contractually. I have worked on those jobs before. I personally like a single prime approach where everything comes through us, the general contractor, because it makes my coordination a lot easier.
Right, because otherwise, if you have everybody's on equal plane, you could have an electrical contractor work on their scope a little bit too far ahead, and then the coordination kind of gets misaligned, and the general contractor's like, wait, hold on, like we're not, like that's not going to work with our system.
Yeah, it can be without an owner serving as that coordinator role, it can be very difficult.
Mm-hmm. No, totally. Well, and on that point, in those, whether it's multi-prime or a single prime, really, you ideally would have a commissioning provider, and that person
would correct.
Oversee everything and make sure that it's all coordinated as well.
Well, it depends on their scope.
Sure.
Savvy owners will pay them for the extra cost of doing all of that coordination. But sometimes when commissioning is procured on a race to the bottom, loss leader, low bid system, it is that doesn't happen. or
Sure.
the commissioning provider takes on that role and maybe doesn't get to do as good of a job as the job requires because they don't have that budget.
No, and I think, that is one of the challenges that we deal with in this industry as a whole is, do you have enough fee to cover the scope of what would be a quality service as opposed to just, okay, we need a commissioning provider and we're just going to rubber stamp this thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
what are those, as the general contractor, though, you do have a little bit more conversation with the owner when it comes to price and scope, right? Especially in design build.
Yes, but it also is dependent on how the owner is going to procure the project. If it's a low bid
Mhm.
project, you may not. If it's a negotiated bid or even a qualified bid, you will have an opportunity to talk to them about it. I've worked all sides of the fence on everything from low bid all the way up to negotiated bid. Personally, I prefer negotiated bid because there's fewer surprises for the owner, but
Yep.
I understand why people do it. It's not necessarily, it takes a lot of trust. And not every owner, especially if it's your first project with that owner, you may not have that trust built up that you can do a negotiated bid project.
Sure. No, and I think these are the things that a lot of designers never really think about or understand
Yeah.
about the
Mhm.
parameters of these projects because the relationship between contractor and owner is kind of mysterious.
Is it?
Well, I think it's mysterious. At least there's a lot of
Okay.
like you kind of play investigator when you get pulled onto a project that's design build, and you're kind of like, okay,
Oh,
what's the dynamic here?
come talk to me. Come talk to me. Because yeah, I mean, um, there, especially for negotiated bid projects, sometimes the general contractor got on board even before the owner has just established the architect.
Mm.
Right.
So there is a lot of and as a general contractor, we understand cost and schedule, and those are some of the big drivers for owners. Uh, so they come to us to figure that out, and so that starts the relationship.
Mhm.
Often, general contractors have people with that long expertise and are able to bring in others in that team that have the expertise to answer owners' questions, so they can be huge influencers for design choices.
Mhm.
Me with a commissioning background, I like third party commissioning, not startup. That's just to set to level set for this
Thank
conversation.
you.
For level set for this conversation, I'm going to use the term commissioning like LP8 and ASHRAE Guideline 0 uses commissioning. That is, it's a third party quality process. Um, and I'm also president of the Building Commissioning Association this year, so I have to use it right. So, okay. So, um, so I have been I've helped owners create owners project requirements, and that trickles down to the basis of design, and then ultimately to the design. Owners have asked me about control system selections or uh, even technical questions like should I use circadian lighting or
Mm.
do I really need to integrate these systems, the lighting control system and the HVAC control system? Do I really need to bring them together? Sometimes they get that technical. Other times I'm like, well, you have to at least to meet code if you're not
Right.
providing separate occupancy sensors. But that's a technical topic. If you want to talk about it, we can, or we can reserve it for a future
No, I mean, well,
future
I
podcast.
think, I personally wish all of my owners got that technical.
Mm.
But the vast majority of designers end up with a very basic conversation about controls. So, that kind of conversation is like a desirable conversation for a lot of designers. But I think for the most part, at least from what I've heard in my experience, it's basically like, which system should I go with? Okay, great.
Yeah,
Do your
yeah.
job.
And Shoo shoo. Don't bother me. Yeah, I agree. In the classes I teach, but also in the upcoming LP8, we do have an OPR questionnaire that you can ask owners. And I believe we've even included like a prioritized OPR question list so that lighting designers their um, can get their questions answered quickly and relatively easily, and sometimes even in a way that the architect can facilitate. You can put it in an email and send it off to the architect, and they can facilitate your answers. So LP8 upcoming. Um, that it's right now it's being copy edited, and it's going to go out to public review shortly. So stay tuned.
Yeah, when that
Awesome.
goes public, we'll try to flag attention to it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. I have a
Thank you.
question.
We
So
have a great committee.
we've
Yes.
talked so much about like on the show just about like projects that have gone awry in the past, right? And a lot of times that projects go awry, a lot of times sometimes it's a low bid situation and things just go south, but a
Sometimes.
lot of times it's from a lack of coordination. So working for a GC that has you on board, how normal is it for a GC, or is there a certain size at which a GC has an MEP coordinator like you who's really going to dive into these projects to be sure these things don't happen?
For sure. It's definitely a larger GC. And even it has to be a larger project generally to get me involved. Uh, Savvier, even sometimes on small tenant improvements, they might bring me in, or I might insist on coming in for those very small, touch points of like, maybe they give me a budget of 2 to 4 hours. Where I'll maybe facilitate a meeting or answer questions for the project engineers or project managers, basically be a technical resource, but definitely mostly hands off. The larger projects, I get involved. The best practice is to bring me on when the project is being estimated, because I can review the drawings, I can see if there's problems, and I can ask questions to clarify scope, not to create a change order. I don't own a boat. Do you know that joke about the regular boat? That's the project. And then the boat alongside the big boat is the change order. So that's the old
I don't think I've
contractor
heard this
joke that they
joke.
make money. Oh gosh,
Oh, okay.
the joke is that contractors make their money on change orders, and
Yep.
that's not how I work, and that's not how the companies that I've worked for work.
Right.
It's just not. It's like a churn and
Well,
burn,
and I think
to me, method of
there's a perspective that
getting
people
clients.
have. Yeah, I think there's a perspective that, depending on which side of the fence you're on, it's like, well, the designers are making tons of money for sitting around doing nothing. Well, the contractors are making tons of money off these change orders that happen all the time. I don't.
Oh, honestly, designers are not paid enough for what they do.
Oh, I agree.
They put in.
No, I don't think. I think there's a fair enough amount of not being paid enough on both sides of the fence.
I think I'm paid
Do you
enough.
disagree?
I'm happy with what I'm doing. I put in a lot of hours. But I think I'm compensated pretty fairly.
All right, fair enough.
But then again, I negotiate for what I do. So, at least for every job I've had. So, young designers, young engineers, negotiate your first offer, negotiate every offer. Life advice serves you well. And if you don't know how to negotiate, the Harvard program on negotiation has really great resources. But that's not technical. That's life skills.
No, but I mean,
That's important,
that's actually
though.
along the lines of this kind of dovetails with our conversation that we had recently about education, and the soft skills are super critical, but they're rarely covered in formal educational spaces.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, where do you get this information? Like, how do you set up a contract? How do you work freelance. Like all this information, you just got to learn on your own without anybody helping you. So I think along that same
At the
lines, how do you
same,
negotiate?
Yeah.
yeah, but at the same time, being a part of professional organizations can help with a lot of that. That's why
Sure.
IES membership is so important,
Yep.
which, I maintain. I also maintain a membership in the Building Commissioning Association. And I also have an ASHRAE membership as well, but that's other ball of wax. But having those organizations gives you, and being involved in those organizations gives you a resource network that you can ask those
Sure.
questions of. I mean,
No, I
like,
completely agree. I think,
I mean,
what you're involved in a lot of varied trades organizations as opposed to like me. I'm just involved in lighting specific organizations. And so it's like, you get a little bit of a broader picture with that. And you also get to go to some interesting conferences that are not like
yeah.
IES like so.
Well, the Building Commissioning Association conference is coming up. It's in October, October 22nd through 24th. It's in
Okay.
Pittsburgh. We have another great
Oh,
lineup.
nice.
I
Hmm.
hope you all will be able to attend.
Yeah, no,
I
that
hope so.
sounds awesome. We'll
See
make
you
sure to
there.
have a link in the description for people to register to it.
Great. Great. It's a wonderful organization for those who are interested in and care about third-party commissioning. Just a really wonderful group of passionate individuals that really care about boots on the ground, like making a difference, not just
Mm.
kind of ivory tower making a difference. But also it's a huge community. Uh, as president, my one of the ways I talk about the Building Commissioning Association is we're like a dog park. Outside the dog
Mm.
park, we're running around. We might fight each other, but hey, once we come to the dog park, once we're at the conference, once we're at our annual leadership retreat, or we're even at a local chapter meeting, we're inside the dog park, and we're telling all of our other friends, hey, look at over there. There's a really good place to sniff. You got to come with me. Let's go. Let's go sniff that. Or hey, did you know they just refreshed the water in the water bowl at the dog? Yeah, let's go get some fresh water. So, we're always looking to help each other out, even if outside the dog park we might be competing against each other. It's one of
Mhm.
the things I love about the Building Commissioning Association.
No, it
And
sounds
honestly,
awesome.
I'll make another plug
Please.
for IES committees. IES committees I've been on other associations committees, um, and IES committees are wonderful to be on because you do have that collegial atmosphere.
Hmm.
Working on the LP6, LP8, LP16 committees, uh, everybody wants to work together. And we all, even if we disagree, we're able to have a really great discussion so that we come out with something in the end that's stronger than if just one person would have proposed it. And it ups my skills as well, and then also gives me that network as well. Like I just this weekend, no lie, I was texting one of my LP8 committee members because we were talking about point integration and what
Mhm.
points are worth it to bring in from the lighting control system over to the BMS. We
Well,
came up with 7.
you qualify that a bit more, like what a point is for integration before you get into
Oh,
the 7 different points.
so a point is just any little bit of data.
Mhm.
That's what the HVAC folks use. Is
Yep.
there a different terminology that you guys use?
No, I think the
No,
thing is
no.
a lot of people think about integration. They don't know about
Okay.
exposing points on a backnet
Right.
platform. So like having that defined a little bit might help them understand where
Yeah.
you're going with it.
Well, and that's exactly right. And you should really be asking that in the OPR phase. Like, okay, you want to integrate your lighting control system and your BMS. Why are we doing it? What do we have to get?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Well,
Right.
we want to make sure the lighting control system is working properly, and yeah, let's So what do we need to do that? Well, we need, and we want a data historian, because usually the BMS is serving as the data historian. I have seen some control systems have their own data historian, lighting control systems, but they're fairly rare. So
And
generally
again,
it's
do you
relied
mind
on the
just
BMS.
defining what a data historian is?
Data historian is just a historical repository of all of those points that you're bringing in. So if you want to go back and look at how the lighting control system has been working over time, you're going to consult the data historian. Really good data historians don't just have tables and tables of data. They also have visualization software to go with it. So in the HVAC world, we call that trends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So just graphs of
as
what the
best
lighting
as
control
we
system is doing.
define, yeah, the most common term that I've found for data historian is like dashboard, even though that's not
Yeah.
technically accurate. It doesn't complete the information in a lot of ways. Like you
Yeah.
said, lighting control systems aren't like the
Yep.
ideal for a BMS, especially. But that's
And
what I would say is the most commonly used term.
Okay. Dashboard is a graphical instantaneous display of the data that's going on right now.
Right. It's not actually tracking the historical.
That's right. Some will, but generally that's
But you
the
need to
exception
clarify
rather
that.
than the
You
norm.
need to say, I want historical data, not just a display of what's going on right now.
You want historical data, and where is that historical data gonna be stored, right? So when I was talking with James Johnson about points, we discovered 7 points that we think could be useful. And really, for us, if you just don't have a lot of budget, those 2 points I recommend are light input. So what are you telling the lights to do? And that would be, for full dimming, that would be 0 to 100%. And 0 would be off. Anything greater than 0 would be on. And occupancy status. Now, once you specify those points, you need to determine how often they're written into the data historian. So generally for these, you can write them every minute. You can write them every second, but that's a lot of data. It doesn't change that often. So if you're going to do it by like a time interval, you can say, I would say 5 minutes as a rule of thumb. And that does 2 things. It preserves memory in your data historian, right? And it decreases network traffic. You can also specify them to be written on change of value, or COV. So that can save even more data, especially if the occupants, the place stays occupied maybe, for 8 hours a day, and then the other 16, it's not occupied. So 2 data points for 1 day, right? For if you're looking at occupancy. So can save a whole heck of a ton of data by doing it that way. So you can also, let's see, go ahead, never mind.
No, it's because you mentioned
2.
like you're good, but you mentioned early on like pulling this data and having these conversations as you're determining your OPR. So, but I immediately thought of who's asking these questions, who's making sure that this is happening. Right, but what do you? So okay, so the MEP coordinator. But what if your project doesn't have an MEP coordinator? Who should be asking these questions? Or do you just say every project needs an MEP of some sort?
Oh, I'm biased. Of course I'm going to say that. So I mean, maybe a very savvy BMS contractor would be asking that. At the same time, I could see that if they were asking for that, it might be perceived as a change order, even if it isn't. They're just saying, by the time you figure this out, it could be too late, because you don't have the network infrastructure to do it, or maybe the system that was chosen can't integrate, and isn't even on a network where it can integrate. Or two, by the time you realize this, it's at the end of the project, maybe 2 weeks for occupancy, and everybody's out of budget. So it's then for sure it's going to be a change order, and a bigger change order than if you would have addressed it earlier.
No, totally. And I think this is one of those things that a lot of designers will just say, this is somebody else's problem to deal with. But by doing that, they're pushing the problem to that last second issue. And it's going to be like, okay, nose goes, who's doing this? If it gets done. And I would say, to your point, at the OPR stage is really the ideal time to at least agree that there's going to be this kind of data exchange and what data needs to be exchanged. Because ultimately you should have an idea. If you're going to be integrating two big systems together, you should have some sense of, what data needs to be shared between the two of them, and who's going to store that data. And it's very simple to write some easy cookie cutter language, even if you just want to be that lazy and copy paste for the rest of your projects, to just have something that says, this is the information that you need to have exposed on your backnet platform or whatever integration protocol.
That's right. It's 7 points and 2 parameters. So the first parameter is, what is it, the point, and the second is, how often should it write to the database.
I mean, I
so
think it's
if you want me to go through those, give people an idea of the 7. The top 2 that we just went through were light level outputs from the luminaires and occupancy status. The ones that I consider optional is light status on and off, and that would be change of value. Power usage. Now, not every system may be able to record power usage. It may not be true RMS power usage. It could be by proxy. It could be the inputted level power usage of the luminaire multiplied by the level.
Right.
So
and it's not actually metering that power. It's just guessing how much power is being used.
Some can do mass metering. Some lighting control systems can do that. Some don't. So got to figure that out.
It's just it's important to know which one is available and which one you want.
That's right. You got to confirm all of this with the manufacturer. So again, when something I've talked about in past podcasts, choose your lighting control system early, or ask owners what's their standard, right? That goes back to the OPR. Okay, so let's see. We just did light level, occupancy status. The optional ones are light status on off, power usage, and then the next one is room light level, and that's as recorded by a light sensor in the ceiling. Some manufacturers have that integrated into their sensors. Others, you need to have a special one. The thing that's really important to know is that light level has to be calibrated, because that light sensor is on the ceiling. So it's actually reading the reflected value, right? And so it also has to be calibrated after the furniture has been moved in.
Yes.
Right? Because the reflectances from those, you guys get, sometimes our electricians don't, and they don't include that in their schedule. And it's, winter's being moved in, that is like days, sometimes the weekend before occupancy. So it could be a second visit by the lighting control system manufacturer. So again, if you need data, you got to put that in the OPR, because you got to go in the budget. 2 visits by a lighting control system program, that's money. And it's such a critical time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I want to mention the point here, and some people might not realize why it's so important to understand the difference between what is hitting the surface and what is reflecting off of the surface. Because if you take a book and you put it on a desk, the light that is being provided onto that book could be plenty of light, and you don't need any more power being driven to bring that light up. But if that book has a dark surface and that
Yep.
reflected light goes up and reports to the sensor that, oh, it's really dark in this room, you got to bring the lights up, then you're going to waste a ton of energy that you don't need to waste.
That's exactly right. And it's even more important if you have direct indirect, and the indirect
Yes.
lights
Yeah.
are
Into the
contributing to
sensors.
that. And your
Yep.
ceiling finish, what's your ceiling finish? Is it
Right.
T-bar, reflective acoustic tile? Is that acoustic tile white, or is it black? Right?
Mhm.
And then, or do you have an open ceiling and you're reflecting off of the gray fireproofing, which has very little reflectance values?
Or worst
I'm
case
sure.
scenario, you have the indirect lighting aimed right at the sensor.
The sensor. Never seen that before.
No, yeah, never seen it so much that I have a picture of it in my Hall of Shame. Do you guys have Hall of Shame folders?
Oh yeah.
We really should. Well, I mean, I guess you do
Yeah.
as integrators. I really should set up a Hall of Shame.
I have a Hall of Shame and a Hall of Triumph, because there are some times when it's done right and you're like, yeah, see, if you do it right, this is what it looks like. This is great. Yeah,
That's fair.
I do have that. Some of my Hall of Triumph, actually, when I took vacation at the beach cottage that we had vacation, there was a switch bank with 4 switches on it. Each of those switches had brother labels to tell you what it was.
Oh, there you go.
Best practice.
Nice.
If you have a switch bank with more than 4, put that in your details and put a label and create a spec for it. But okay. Do you want to,
All right,
should we go
yeah.
back? There's only 2
Please.
more pieces of
Yep.
data. Okay. Color temperature command. So circadian lighting. What color temperature are you tend to do? This helps for commissioning, especially. It helps for them to validate that the system is working properly. And then the last one is button press. Now, I talked with James about this, and I was like, how did you do this? And he says, well, our thinking is to use it to validate the input to the fault detection and diagnostic systems, or FDD. And so that's like a platform like SkySpark. Basically, they're doing automated checking of system functions. You see them most do that in for HVAC, for mechanical systems. But because James and I are mechanical engineers that are also lighting nerds that know and care and love lighting and lighting controls, we have, we make sure that that data gets in so that the FDD systems can actually run that on it. So their thinking is, if the fault is a legitimate fault, i.e. the system isn't working, somebody's going to be pushing the buttons, and then combined with that light level output or the lattice, it would say, oh, well, there's something wrong with the system. The lights aren't turning on, even though they're pushing the button a bunch of times. But it could also say, oh, well, no, the system's functioning. It's just the light level isn't high enough for that person, because now they're pushing the buttons to raise the light level. And that could cause, the facility team to evaluate whether the light level for that space is actually appropriate. Maybe the time it was built and 3 years later when they painted the whole room black, the light level output actually isn't the level, right? So,
well, and I think that
nobody
that
told
is,
the facility engineer.
that's helpful for thinking ongoing support and maintenance, not just at the opening of the project, but actually down the road. Because you're right, they could resurface, they could change the furniture, they could do a lot of different things that affect how that light in that space performs. And as a result, having button presses tracked can help clarify, like, oh yeah, like somebody's going in there and mashing this button like 20 times every single time they go in there. Probably worth going into that room and seeing why that's the case.
And that's also the type of historical data that would be very beneficial, even for designers and stuff down the road. Like, take your typical school, right? Every designer thinks the school is going to be used, classrooms are going to be used in a certain way. And inherently, the teachers get in there and they move things, they change things, they do things differently. So if you were able to collect those data points and see how often they're adjusting light levels, turning lights off, raising, lowering. You could actually use that data to better enhance your designs down the road. And you'd have to have a conversation with that building owner. So maybe it's a district-wide thing that you're doing, right? You implement it in this school and go from there. But that would be great data to have.
Absolutely. And just remember that, as we age, our eyes age, our lens yellows. So we're getting less light. And so as our workforce, especially our teaching workforce ages, you may need to raise normal light level
Well,
in that space.
and speaking of age of fixtures. LEDs don't last forever. So
Yes,
over time, the performance of the LED is going to go down, and they're going to, again, start raising the output. And if the output maximum's not enough, okay, it's time to replace the fixtures.
100%. And even I'm going to go a couple steps back from that. If you're doing task tuning, as a way to save energy, because generally at install, spaces are overlit, right? So if you want to meet maybe, your light level is 50 that you designed for, you're going to get 70, right? Between the factors of safety from the manufacturer's cut sheet and, in your AGI program, it's more than you will be overlit. So if you do task tuning, you can get light levels that will are right sized for the space, right? And save 10-20% energy right off the top, right? But you're right,
And
as they age, you're going to need to go back and increase that light level. But
and
if
just for people who might not be familiar with the
tracking
term
room light level,
task tuning.
yes. Oh, task
Um,
tuning, old
Yeah.
concept. I mean, we're going back
well,
to the
I mean, it's an
80s.
old concept, but I mean, there are a lot of people out there who don't understand these kinds of concepts. I mean, really what we're talking about is just like cutting the upper part of the range of output permanently or semi-permanently, so that you cannot exceed like 80%. You can never go higher than 80% of its output. And over time, as the depreciation of the LEDs happens, you can ramp that up slowly so that you're still compensating for that loss of output. But task tuning with LEDs is a lot easier than it used to be with fluorescents and metal halides and all of that.
That's right. You're not tweaking the ballast. Maybe there's a little potentiometer on your ballast. But again, it goes back to specifying it properly, right?
Right.
If you're going to you need to know from your OPR that you're going to do task tuning. And so you need to specify the right ballast, right? In the old days, you need a ballast with that potentiometer. You need a dimming ballast. Nowadays, you're handling that through your control system. So again, you still need to do that work in the OPR or the BOD to set it up so you're specifying it properly and you have those features in that lighting control system.
Yeah. Well, we're almost out of time here, but I mean, this is really great stuff. And I think, hopefully people are going to be taking notes from this episode because it really gives, at least from a designer standpoint, a peek behind the curtain of something you don't ever really get to hear or see about. But I mean, when it comes to coordination with a project, there's a lot of political dynamics that could be affecting how trades interact with each other or how the owner is expecting the contractors to behave. There's always politics, but the dynamics of how contractor is hired, whether there's multi-prime, single prime, or even just how the owner plans to procure everything or lowest budget approach can really impact the success of the project as an overall goal. And so the different people who are responsible for making sure that the project's going to be satisfactory might not have enough fee in their budget to be able to actually do that job effectively. So it's really important
100%.
at the very beginning to make clear, like, okay, you're putting this amount of money towards the project. You do realize that it's not really sufficient. Really, you should be putting this much more towards it. But then also at
Mhm.
that outset, once you've agreed upon a price, you still need to have these conversations about what the expectations are, and to get as detailed as you can. In some cases, yeah, the owner might not be able to have a good conversation about integration, but ultimately having an agreement towards what data is expected in the integration between the two systems is going to be really critical to the success, because otherwise, at the very last second, right before the building opens to occupancy, it's going to be like, okay, who's doing this? How are we doing this? And suddenly it turns into this massive change order. So, ultimately, we should be doing a better job as designers of helping guide that conversation, not necessarily dictating every little in and out of it, but at least giving some information to guide that process. Because again, as the experts for the systems, we should be at least supplying some expectation for how the system's going to be set up and programmed at the end of the day. And so, we on the lighting control side don't really do as good a job of requesting those features and making sure that those are included until it's, submittals or worse. So, we could just do a better job of creating these documents and communicating these things. But at the same time, I think that does make the argument that we need to have better fees for designers. We need to be able to compensate for that service that they're providing. They're doing a huge amount of coordination once you get integration involved. So, looking at things as, well, we're trying to shrink the budget, so let's shrink the fee to all the specialists who are designing this. Well, that's actually the worst thing you could do, because now the guidance you're getting is much more limited than the guidance that you would get if you had a larger budget for the design services. So I think kind of that give and take of where money should be allocated to make sure the project is successful is still something that we need to refine better in this country to be able to provide good projects. And I think, again, the Building Commissioning Association, which is going to be having their conference when?
October 22nd through 24th.
Awesome. Yeah, like these groups are there to try to educate us, to make sure that we know what needs to be done to make sure the project is satisfactory, because that's really the goal at the end of the day. Yeah, okay, fine, it's a job, we need to make money, but the overall goal of design service is to provide something that the owner is going to be happy with.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And people do really need to get into this stuff early, right? Because that unfortunately is part of the problem is people do tend to, like you said, it tends to get cut down in the budget. But as the systems get more intelligent and more complex, the integration didn't get easier. It became more complicated. Right. So I think a lot of people are just like, oh,
Yeah.
it's easy. It's like at my house, I have my smart speaker. It talks to this thing and it just happens. It's not. No,
If only.
it's not that easy, right? And that is unfortunately part of the problem is more complicated systems have made the integration that much more complicated and that much more work to do so.
And I want to add another wrinkle on there so that people take the complications seriously. It's not just your control systems. It's the network architecture. Because now what we're seeing is they used to be integrated within the whole building, within that building riser. Now what's happening is they're virtualizing their servers for the HVAC for that data. So now we have to go out from the building over to this, then they talk, and then they come back and it goes back up the building riser.
Yep.
That's a really good
Lyn,
point.
thank you.
Firewall rules and all of those fun things.
Yeah, all the fun stuff, right? No network. Your network can't talk to mine anymore. You have to go out to the cloud and come back, and that's the only way it works anymore.
That's
And
right.
Or contact closures.
And then you got
because-
firewalls, and then you got to figure out, how they're communicating and UDP and all of that. I mean,
all the fun stuff.
we only touch the surface. But I will
Yeah.
say is that I absolutely agree with you. Designers need to be paid for their work, right? That's really important. Nobody should work for free. 2 is that, you got to get this done early. You got to figure it out early. And 3, you're not just doing it for the long for that move in, you are doing it for the long haul, like you said.
Mhm.
And it's only when you design for the long haul will the energy savings actually persist over the long run. Because that's what we're really about. We're not about saving energy right at turnover. We want to save energy 10 years down the road.
Yep. Lyn, as always, thank you for a fantastic conversation. And if everybody got even one thing out of this, it was go hire yourself an MEP coordinator and your life will be better. We all promise you that. Lyn, thank you so much for your
An
time.
MEP
Truly
coordinator that cares
appreciate
about lighting.
it.
Yeah, thank you both. It's always so much fun to talk with you guys.
I will close us out and remind everyone today's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association.
And it's financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. Got all of our episodes, including the ones that Lyn has been a part of in the past, and a whole lot more. But also, huge shout out to our sponsors for this episode. We could not do this without their support. MW Connect, you may know them as McWong, but they are now rebranded as MW Connect. Check them out, mwconnect.us. They are a part of this huge conversation about integration, and you should check out what they're doing. They're doing some phenomenal stuff in that field, as well as just lighting controls in general. So check out their products, check out the documentation. They've been in the industry for over 40 years now, so it's worth getting to be familiar with them. But until then, thank you for joining us, and Lyn, thank you again. This was an awesome conversation.